European airlines just faced something they never thought possible: an entire continent running out of jet fuel in 6 weeks. Airports are set to face systemic jet fuel shortages within 3 weeks if the Strait of Hormuz isn't fully reopened. That's according to the ACI Europe, the group that represents airports in the bloc. Flight routes that worked for decades suddenly becoming death traps, and the entire aviation industry scrambling to rebuild itself from scratch, while oil prices doubled overnight. The Iran crisis didn't just disrupt flights. It exposed how fragile the global aviation system really is. And now European airlines are making permanent changes that will reshape how we fly for the next 30 years. Let me show you exactly what's happening behind the scenes and why your next flight to Asia will never be the same. Europe has maybe 6 weeks of jet fuel left, according to the International Energy Agency. That's not a supply hiccup. That's an existential threat to European aviation. Traffic through the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz waterway ground to a halt after Iran closed it during the war with the US and Israel, cutting off the lifeline that European airports depend on. Here's what most people don't realize. Around 75% of Europe's jet fuel imports come from the Middle East region. When Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz on February 28th, European airlines didn't just lose a route. They lost access to the fuel that keeps their planes in the air. Benchmark jet fuel prices spiked to a record $1,800 per ton on March 18th before retreating slightly in April. That's not just expensive. Jet fuel prices have roughly doubled since the war began. When your biggest operating cost doubles overnight, you don't adjust. You rebuild everything. But the fuel crisis is just the beginning. The real story is how European airlines are permanently restructuring their entire business model. Look at what happened when the Iran crisis first hit. The airspace above Iran, Israel, Jordan, Iraq, and other countries in the region was closed, causing airlines to change their flight paths to keep passengers and crew safe. In total, 81 flights were diverted by 16 airlines on Tuesday alone. Those weren't just temporary diversions. European airlines like Wizz Air, Lufthansa, and British Airways dodged Iraqi and Iranian airspace, opting instead for routes over Afghanistan and Central Asia. Iran closed, then reopened its airspace after nearly 5 hours on Wednesday amid concerns about possible military action. Even after Iran reopened, the airlines kept flying around it. Why? Because European airlines learned something crucial. The Middle East corridor they'd relied on for decades could disappear without warning. The corridor is now effectively closed. Since US and Israeli strikes on Iranian military targets on February 28th, the airspace of Iran, Iraq, and Kuwait has been shut by NOTAM. So European airlines are building entirely new route networks. Airlines are funneling Europe to Asia traffic through two alternative paths, one swinging north through the Caucasus and Central Asia, and one looping south through Egypt and the Arabian Sea. The northern route takes you over Turkey, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, then across Central Asia via Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, or Afghanistan, before heading south toward India and Southeast Asia. Additional flight time is 60 to 90 minutes versus the pre-conflict Gulf route. The southern route swings from Europe via Egypt across southern Saudi Arabia's Jeddah Flight Information region, then through Oman and over the Arabian Sea toward India, Southeast Asia, or Australia. Both corridors add time, burn more fuel, and cost significantly more to operate. But here's where it gets really interesting. European airlines aren't just finding workarounds. They're abandoning the hub-and-spoke model that dominated aviation for 30 years. Many carriers are now increasing their direct flight, offering to cities across Asia and Africa to accommodate passenger demand. Lufthansa is among the carriers, increasing the number of flights being offered to Asia and Africa, with 4 extra flights between Munich and Singapore. British Airways added 7 extra round-trip flights to Bangkok and Singapore and will launch daily flights from London Heathrow to Melbourne via Kuala Lumpur from January 2027. A new 3 times weekly service to Colombo from London Gatwick starts on October 23rd. This isn't temporary crisis management. This is permanent network restructuring. European airlines are building direct routes to destinations they used to reach through Middle Eastern hubs. Air India maintains its scheduled services to Europe and North America while sustaining connectivity to several international gateways using alternative routings that are assessed as safe for operations. The cost impact is staggering. Jet fuel prices soared 103% month-on-month as of March. In the US, the price of jet fuel nearly doubled, increasing from $2.50 a gallon on February 27 to roughly $4.25 a gallon by early April. Airlines are passing those costs directly to passengers. A one-way Delhi to Frankfurt economy ticket for travel within the next 25 days currently averages around 62,000 rupees, almost double the usual price. But some airlines hedged their fuel costs and others didn't. Wizz Air hedged 83% for its financial year ending March 2026 at $681 to $749 per ton, but coverage drops to 55% for the following year. The airline has already warned of a projected €50 million profit hit. Southwest Airlines ended its fuel hedging program in early 2025 as part of a broader cost-cutting push. CEO Bob Jordan said at a JP Morgan investor conference that hedging had not been beneficial for the past 10 to 15 years. The timing proved unfortunate as jet fuel prices roughly doubled following the outbreak of the 2026 conflict. Meanwhile, airlines are making painful operational cuts. KLM said it would cut 160 flights next month, about 1% of its total European routes. The airline cited rising kerosene costs and said a limited number of flights are no longer financially viable to operate. Lufthansa took drastic measures as a series of strikes exacerbated its fuel crisis. It shut down the CityLine unit, withdrawing 27 planes from service and trimmed capacity across the rest of its network by grounding older fuel-guzzling wide-body jets. Global capacity for May has been reduced by about 3 percentage points, with all but one of the 20 largest airlines slashing flights. Istanbul is emerging as one of the most prominent transit points between Europe and the broader Asian region. Turkish Airlines now serves more countries than any other carrier and uses its Istanbul hub as a high-frequency bridge between Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Here's what will change aviation forever. Airlines aren't planning for this crisis to end. They're planning for the next one. The Iran crisis taught European airlines that their entire business model was built on a single point of failure. The Middle East corridor could disappear overnight, taking their fuel supply, routes, and profits with it. So they are building anti-fragile systems, networks that don't just survive disruption, but get stronger from it. Multiple fuel suppliers across different regions. Direct routes bypassing potential conflict zones. Hub structures that can reroute traffic instantly. The hub-and-spoke model that made air travel cheaper is giving way to direct routes that make it more reliable. Passengers have learned that in an uncertain world, paying extra for a direct flight isn't a luxury. It's insurance. The Middle East's role as the global aviation crossroads is ending. The world changed, and the aviation business model had to change with it.